Everyone dreams about living an uncommon life, but how we define that dream is very different for each of us. And for most, it's a lifelong pursuit. Welcome to the Uncommon Life Project podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living that life or enjoying the journey to get there. We're going to also give you some tools, tricks, and tips for starting or accelerating your own efforts to live an uncommon life, a life worth celebrating and savoring. Please welcome your hosts, Bryan Dewhurst and Philip Ramsey.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Uncommon Life Project. My name is Philip Ramsey.
And I am Bryan Dewhurst, and I'd just like to thank Ashley for the warm introduction.
Thank you, Ashley. Great job. We got a really fun show for you. Again, we'd like to keep these a little quicker, and then we also want to just get right to the point. So I'm going to start our 25-minute clock, which is actually hard for Bryan and I to keep under 25 minutes, but we are going to do our best, and it just started. So what are we going to talk about today? Be Dizzle.
Yeah, so we listen to podcasts too, and I was listening to this podcast. And again, I don't want this to be like a negative towards someone else, but I think there's a really important point that we want to hit on today. So I want to try to make it about that point.
And this podcast is fairly popular. It's pretty well known.
And it's great. Like, he's got a ton of good stuff, and he's challenged, us in the way we think about a few things and how we're presenting our ideas and philosophies and all that. So, again, I think this is, financial planning and investment advice. There's lots of different schools of thought. And I think, that's why we named ourselves Uncommon Wealth Partners, because we think differently. And this is one of the most important points that I think differentiates us in the way we think versus other traditional financial planners.
Okay, perfect. So in this podcast, the individual, the host, was talking about, is it
frequent questions that he gets.
Totally.
And we get this a lot too. So
the question that he got was, should I pay off debt or should I invest? That was the question. Let's solve it.
Yeah.
So he went into a patient type, as we call it, or a client type, and just kind of set the stage. So let's go into that.
Yeah. It was a 31-year-old couple, $95,000 in student loan debt. They did not own their own home.
$95,000 of student loan debt. Did not own their own home. Yep.
Right. And dual income. I think they were dinks, as we like to call them, dual income, no kids. I didn't make that up, but that's what people call them. And they could save $2,000 a month to invest or accelerate their debt pay down. And they were really grappling with paying off their student loan debt or investing. And then the podcast host kind of launched into this whole main point that it's really just mathematical. Like, you just compare the interest rate that you would pay on the debt versus the interest rate that you would get, on the investment money, and then the tax deductibility of those contributions, whether you could deduct the interest or whether you could, deduct the contribution to a retirement plan. And that's where I lost my marbles.
Well, it's valid, right? But we feel like he missed one very, very critical point before he launched into it.
So that point is in our opinion, is non-financial or non-mathematical, is that you only have two types of money. And I think why I get so heightened or triggered or passionate about this topic is because I think this is a big part of the value that we bring to people. Is you only have two types of money. You have now money that you pay tax on, like checking account, like I just got paid for my job, that's deposited in your bank account type money, or later money, which is the 401k, IRA, I would say even Roth IRA, 403b, later money, where you're putting money into some sort of instrument to get some sort of tax break, or your money is now inaccessible in front of the age of 60. And this couple, and where the whole thing went, they were talking about investing not in like what we would call like a joint brokerage account or like a joint with rights of survivorship, which is the same tax treatment as now money. They were talking about, overfunding or maxing out, kind of like employment or employer plans or like IRAs. I think it was like a 403b in their scenario, and getting like an employer match.
Yep.
And I don't think you can compare those two apples to apples, because you're now you now have the inability to access your own money. In this couple's case, they were 31, really until you're 60 years old. So they're literally looking at separating themselves from their money and the use of that money beyond the tax deduction for 30 years. And I think our industry does a horrible job at talking about this, at highlighting it, and making it extremely clear what you're doing to people and what they're doing with their money. And I just can't, I just wanted to do a show about it because it just upsets me to no end. And why does it upset me so much, or why do I get so passionate about it? Is because we sit down with couples and we ask them, what do you want your life to be like? And everything they say is in the next 1 to 3 years. I want to have a kid. I want to pay off our house. I want a new car. I want to go on a trip. I want to start my own business. None of that stuff is deferred for 3 decades.
Yep. And so the question that I think that we were like, whoa, like that really is interesting. He didn't even ask was, when would you like to retire? When do you want to start having this time freedom in your life? And what Bryan and I have found in our practice is it's never honestly 65 or the retirement age of 60. It seems like, man, if I could do it, I'd want it tomorrow. And when our clients say that and then they laugh, and Bryan and I are just serious as, stoic of like, okay, let's make it happen. Like, it's just completely uncommon to them. Like, I didn't even know I could do that. And so that was the question that we were like, well, we need to know, like, what's all we needed to know more information about these 31 couple that had $95,000 of debt, and when would they want to retire? What do they want their life to look like? What are they passionate about? What are they excited about? All this stuff. And it could be that they love their current job. Could be, right? And if that's the case, it totally changes things. But I still think the question needs to be asked of, when would you like to retire? Or when would you like to have time freedom where you have money coming in that's covering your base expenses, so then you can do what you'd like? And I don't know about you, but I'd say a lot of our clients and people that we run into would say earlier than 60, if they could.
Right. Absolutely. And I think even if you want to make the case, and I want to go back to this because I think it's important. If you want to make the case of like, should I pay off student loan debt or should I invest? You have to make that in like a non-retirement account, because you could set up like a joint brokerage account at TD Ameritrade and just buy index funds and plow that $2,000 a month extra into that, like some S&P funds or whatever your allocation decision is. I don't want to get into all that, and you could build up that pot of money and you could live off that money in your 40s if your expenses are low enough, and you could retire before 60 years old. But if you're crossing that line and putting that money into a retirement plan, I just think our industry is doing a complete disservice to people of saying, oh, by the way, you're not going to be really able to benefit from this money for 3 decades.
Yes. And so let's go back to the software and the process that we take our clients through, because I think it's valid. And we put all of our clients or future clients through a system where we will show them a snapshot. If they continue to do what they're doing today, will they be okay when they want to retire? And we always go to the traditional planners, the traditional advisors will go to age 67. That's usually full retirement age for Social Security. We can argue till we're blue in the face that we probably won't have the Social Security that is today for people in their 30s. But we always give people a snapshot of, what does it look like if you continue what you're doing today? Are you going to be okay? And the system we do is amazing for that. So keep talking through that.
So we do that. We just kind of call it like a baseline of, what are you saving? Where's your money? What's that compounding? And, would that meet your retirement needs or income needs at 67? That's like the book answer, right? And the software tells them, it runs like 1,000 scenarios and throws out the bottom 100, throws out the top 100, and it says, hey, you got like 100% chance of success. Then what we try to do is we work down to like 62.
Well, here's the deal. At the end of the day, we know what our clients are passionate about. We know what they're excited about. And so what they're excited about, they kind of want to do tomorrow. And that's really the fact. And so what we then try to do is like, okay, let's tweaking some things. Let's give you some recommendations that we can move that 67 number down because we really know that as soon as we can get you to this point where you can cover your base expenses with your cash flow and your investments, then basically you can ride off in the sunset. And we just talked about just having this desire of having a mindset in retirement. If we'll put a link in our on the bottom here, just so you can go listen to that if you'd like to listen to that. So we know our clients and what they're passionate about. So we know what their goals are, and we want to try to align their money with their goals at this point. So we're starting to work backwards. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then we show them at 62, if you could retire, if you kept doing what you're doing and you retired at 62, would you have a high probability of success of being done? And the software kicks those variables out and that number. And, for a lot of our clients, we deal with a lot of people that are like, we call them power savers. They're just good at saving, and they've predominantly saved in retirement plans. And then we say, okay, you're at 100% at 62. Now let's move that to 55. And when you move it to 55, typically for a lot of the younger couples that we're dealing with, dual income, no kids, or just power savers or whatever, but they've predominantly saved like 80 to 90% of the money they've saved is in these retirement plans. And then the number of, 100% success rate kind of falls off a cliff because, well, now that money really can't be accessed meaningfully, ahead of the age of 60. And so now it's like, oh, shoot, like we're really far away from retiring sub 60 because all of our assets are in these vehicles that are really geared to be used once I'm 60 or older. And that's really where the power of the 7 sources of residual income of having, real estate that produces cash flow, or businesses that produce cash flow, or, just income from other sources that aren't tied to all these government rules and restrictions and regulations. And so that is really, I think when couples see that of like, oh, wow, like, well, now what do we have to do if we want to do that? And we've put so much away into these 401ks. And I think this guy's podcast, he gets into that later in the episode, which I wish he would have kind of maybe led with more, is, your goals and everything that you want to accomplish now is more tangible. And so we're getting a lot of these couples that it's just kind of like, yeah, I've got $250,000 or whatever the number is saved in these retirement plans, but man, it's 30 years away. Like, I'm just tired of putting more money in there. Like, I want to own an Airbnb, or we want to travel, or like if we had all this money in our bank account, we would live a different life, and we want to start living that different life. We've proven we can save the money.
Mm-hmm. Advisors today aren't really helping clients get to that point. Here's my point. I was in Omaha for this little deal, and it was for like advisors who invest in the market, and we have a money manager. And so we were at this, actually the Omaha Zoo, and I overheard an advisor talking to a younger woman and kind of telling her to start up a Roth IRA, get the employee match. Anyway, and after that guy left, I was like, hey, so sorry, overheard you, but like, what do you think about what that guy said? And she's like, I just don't know if I agree with it. And I was like, well, tell me more. And she's like, well, my husband and I would like to retire when we're 40 years old. And this is the reason for the podcast. And I was like, if you're going to retire at 40 years old, then why would you put your money in an account that you can't access to until you're 59 and a half? And her face lit up. She's like, exactly what I was going through my head when he told me that. I was like, you just need advisors to help you with your goals and try to help you maximize all the dollars that are coming into your economic engine. Her and her husband just got married. And so that's when, guess what? We got a new client because no other advisors are helping people with that. In fact, they don't even know how to get paid. But here's the deal. It's not about us. It's about really asking the right questions to find out what's important to the client. And then doing what you should do is just help them achieve their goal faster. I mean, it's not rocket science. And so I just wanted to mention that true real life case study because I feel like there's so many more people out there that have these goals and they don't even know if they can even ask a traditional advisor because all these traditional advisors are going to say, well, get your company match. Well, maybe.
Yeah. So I want to key in on that because, and I want to do a whole different episode on this, like with actual numbers. We're kind of shooting from the hip today and kind of just talking about this more conceptually. But this whole idea of the company match is so hilarious to me because, and I think it's important and it's powerful and it can be a part of your retirement plan, but like, it's no reason to stay stuck in a job because of that. And what I think people miss is that there's other ways to get an employer match without trapping your money. And what I mean by that is like, think, and again, think of this couple that they're 31 and they could save $2,000 a month. And that's conceivably $24,000 a year that they could put in a retirement plan and then get, the maximum match from their employer. Or they could take that $24,000 and buy a rental property that's, let's just say it's a $125,000 property and be getting, whatever, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 a month rent, probably have a mortgage payment that's sub $700 a month. You have some insurance, maybe some fix-up costs. And let's just say you're netting $300 a month profit off that rental property. Well, that's $3,600 a year. Depending on what your salary is, if you're getting a 3 to 4% match, that's probably what the number is, pretty close. But you're getting that match in your bank account, and that's a profit on top of the equity that you're building in the property by paying your mortgage payment and having somebody else pay your mortgage payment on that rental property. You're getting the benefit of all of that right now. And yeah, you're getting that money in an employer match, deposit in your 401k or 403b or whatever your plan is. But you can't benefit really from that number until you're 60. And I say that to people all the time when we meet with them. It's like, you could have 2 million in your 401k right now, but you're 35. Like, what does it change? Like, unless you're going to punch out and take that money and take the tax hit, it's really meaningless.
And there's ways to get that money out of it in an uncommon way, but like that's not the point of the podcast.
Yeah, that's not the point. It's you're trapping this money in there for 3 decades when you could be getting an employer match from the guy down the street who wants to rent a house.
And not only that, in now money.
Yeah, and not only that, you're getting the tax. There's just tax benefits of owning real estate. You can depreciate a home. You can expense different things that you're not expensing if you have a job. And so there's tax benefits. And then, you keep the property up, you build this equity, and, real estate appreciates, rents rise with inflation. And so that asset has multiple things that it's doing for you at the same time, as opposed to trapping that money in a 401k where you really can't do anything else with it other than just let it sit there. And I think the other important point that you highlight a lot that I think is totally missed is that when you put money in the stock market, you don't really learn anything because you're still doing your job, you're doing your deal, you're taking care of your family, you're going through life, and you're just plowing money into these plans. And you don't really learn anything about investing. You don't really learn anything about ups and downs. You're just focused on your daily life. And then you're hoping that this money is at a meaningful point when you hit 60 and you can punch out. But when you set up a real estate LLC with your spouse and you go buy a rental property and you fix it up and you get that renter in there, you learn a lot and you accomplish a lot. And you get the reward of that in some respects and the risk of it in some respects right now. And when you start to scale that, and we have couples that now have 3, 4, 5, 6 rental properties that they've built in the last 5 to 10 years. And now they're getting all that cash flow, all that equity accrual with the mortgages getting paid down, all that accrual with, home prices going up. And they're on fixed rate notes. It's a powerful wealth creator. And so, yeah, I heard that podcast and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to this than just like a mathematical equation. What are the interest rates? Is what do you want your life to be like? And what are the other ways you can get an employer match? Or what are the other ways you can increase your income or increase your wealth beyond just putting money in a 401k? And I just think if you learn one thing from this podcast today, it's like, where is your money really going? And are you crossing that line of like, I can't touch this money until I'm 60? And really analyzing, does that align with your goals? Because a lot of times it doesn't. You want to buy a house, you want to pay off debt, you want to get married, you want to have a kid, you want to adopt.
You want to go on a vacation?
You want to go on vacation. That's all now money. But if you're putting all of your excess income into a retirement plan, it's going to be so much harder to accomplish those goals. And you're going to be so much more trapped into whatever it is you're doing currently. And that's why we talk a lot about doing what you're passionate about, because, if you're not doing what you're passionate about and you're giving away all your excess income into a retirement plan you can't touch, and to help you facilitate these things in your life that you want, it's going to be a long road on that path.
And the difference between what you're passionate now and when you're passionate in retirement is probably going to be the exact same thing. But what you now can do is access the money that you've been putting away over the last 30 years now because of age. And what we always say is like, why not just do that now? Like, when do you want to not do what you love? Well, never.
Right.
Exactly. And you'd
And
actually love life more if you're doing
right.
that.
And I think, we get a lot of people that become clients that read like Robert Kiyosaki, Tony Robbins, kind of personal development, investing in yourself, investing in other assets, real estate, is a common one. A lot of people that want to start their own business. There's so much marketing around investing in the stock market and max out these retirement plans, take advantage of the company match. We want to be that marketing or that voice, that encouragement to say, no, invest in yourself. I think one of the best things that I love that you say to people, Philip, and you ask them this question every time we sit down is like, what is your best asset? And they'll say their house or their Roth or whatever. We
This
had one.
The engagement ring. That was the
Yeah,
best
I
one.
like that one. But your biggest asset is you and what God has designed you to do. Because when you're doing that and you're passionate, it doesn't feel like work. And that's when you're most on fire. And that's actually when you're most attractive and you can earn a premium for what it is you want to do and what you were geared to do. And so I think highlighting that like vocation and what is it that you're supposed to be doing. And it takes an investment in yourself to fully get there. And that's foreign to what everybody is telling you to do with your money. It's like, no, work hard, get a profit, and then put an account you can't touch for 3 decades. And then your life will be different at that point. And I think a lot of the millennials, and there's people like sub 35, sub 40 are saying like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to work at a job I hate for 30 years. Like, I want to travel. I want to live in a tiny home, or I want to change jobs 5 or 6 times. And my passion's going to change. And along that path, they're going to figure out what it is they're truly supposed to do, right?
Yeah, we're definitely advocating for smart transition is what we would call that. Not just like, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to try this thing. Like, I don't know. And like, let's do some market-based testing to see if this is actually a good idea or not. But maybe we can do all this while you're working at your current job. And yeah, it's going to be probably a little bit more work, but it's going to be a little safer. And you're going to feel like you have a little bit more grace with your current job because you're doing something on the side that's kind of really funding what you're passionate about. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think the last thing, we could go on several different tangents, but like Brett Appleton comes to mind of the podcast we shot with him last year, and works at Wells Fargo. They have a great company match and all that stuff, but he wasn't passionate about putting all of his excess income into the retirement plan and being stuck there for 30 years. No, they were pouring their excess money and passion into Airbnb and the lifestyle that additional cash flow and the additional wealth creation from those properties is allowing them to design their life. And if you look at what retirement is, it's really financial freedom. And what that gives you is time freedom. And really what we're talking about is you get to design your day. And what we're trying to say, really, I think in terms of season 2 is, why would you put off designing the life you want to live 2 to 3 decades? Now, if you're older, if you're in your 40s or 50s, and that whole 60 thing is a little closer timeline, then obviously that's maybe going to impact things. But why would you delay designing your life? And when you look at the 7 sources of residual income, you don't have to wait. There are other ways to make money. There are other ways to invest the profit off of your labor. And a lot of times they have a bigger wealth impact than maybe just putting money into the stock market. And even if you do end up putting the money into the stock market, is the IRA 401k the best avenue if you want to retire sub 60? We would say the answer is no in that case. But that's where you got to meet. You got to do a financial plan, and you got to really be honest with what your goals are and what you're willing to do.
And you do a great job of like, okay, let's get everything shored up on the basis of what you're passionate about. Let's align your cash flow. And then when you're 50 years old or plus, then let's put them in a 401k. Let's then like try to get a tax deduction before this. But then you have the light at the end of the rainbow where you're going to access that quicker instead of somebody who's 31 who's going to throw all their money away in that.
Yeah. I want to highlight this because I think this is important. I thank you for saying that. Let's just say you're 50, you and your spouse are 50, and you're like, I got 10 years. And let's just say from 0 to 50, you haven't put one dime in a retirement plan. Not one. You've invested in businesses. You've invested in yourself. You've invested in money that you can touch. And now you have financial freedom. And in that, you still, like, you own a business and you got all this money coming in and you've got to do something with it. Well, a 50-year-old, there's a catch up. Let's just say you have a you're working 2 jobs and you're going to max out your 401k and get the company match. You and your spouse can put away like $24,000 a year between your employee contributions plus the catch up. That's before the match. And then the match is on top of that. So if you have a husband and wife at age 50 and you could each max out your retirement plan, that's basically, $50,000 a year you're putting away in retirement. In the 10 years from 50 to 59, and let's just say you earned no interest on your money. There's not a return on the stock market. That's putting away $500,000. Now you factor in, let's just say you could average 6%. The money's not all in there on the front end, but those limits are going to increase over time. And you get 6% interest. That's like putting away $750,000 between 50 and 60.
A lot of money, which that's
a
pretty
lot
much
of money.
What our clients come to us now.
And yeah, we're getting people in their mid 50s and 60s. And like, that's a lot of money. Like if we meet with somebody and they have $750,000 in their 401k, like that's a lot for the average person. And so what we're saying is like with no compound interest, you could put away $500,000 based on the rules today, into these plans, and then the growth upon that money. And the other thing I'd say is like the stock market is not true compound interest. True compound interest is you don't pay tax, you always get a positive return, and your money snowballs, kind of downhill in a good way, right? Like kind of like you're rolling a snowball off the top of a mountain. Like it's just going to continue to build on itself. But that's not what the stock market is. And, I look at my mom, she's lost half of her 401k in the last 20 years, 2 or 3 times being in the stock market. Well, that's not compound interest. And so you could get to that 5-yard line of retirement and the market goes down 40, 50%. And now you're backwards. And so that's not compound interest. So why wouldn't you start that and maxing that out if you're going to put money into these retirement plans once you already have financial freedom and you have enough assets on the other side, the now money, that you can have and design your own life? Okay, now I'll put money into a retirement plan because I can afford to tie it up. And so what we're trying to say is every person's situation is unique. Every person's goals are different. And do you just be extra careful if you're going to tie up your money into these plans, and especially if you're going to like max them out, that aligns with your timeline of when do you want to retire and what do you want to do?
Yeah. Dude, this is so good. I'm so sorry. We've hit our 25 minutes. I feel like we have so much to talk about, but let's be true to this.
Yeah. And I think we're going to get into more detail about this. We want to dive deeper in the second season of the podcast about this, and then making these conversations and these analysis, like let's get into the numbers of rental properties and building out 4 or 5 rental properties over a 10-year period versus getting the company match and just doing the deal at work for 10 years. And like, let's really break that number down, for our listeners.
You've been listening to the Uncommon Life Project. My name is Philip Ramsey.
And I'm Brian Dewhurst.
Thank you for listening. And honestly, we want you to live an uncommon life. And if this inspires you and encourages you, we've done our job. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.
That's all for this episode of the Uncommon Life Project, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.